How's it going, everybody? In this video, I wanted to walk you guys through how to set up something that I've done a fair amount of Googling about to try to get an understanding of actually how to deploy it. And that is going to be the ACI simulator with the very latest version of code as of today, which is going to be 4-2.2 Echo or E. So, a lot of Googling has been done. Apparently, there is a level of misconfusion, I guess, to a degree, where basically when you look at it from the perspective of how to deploy it, I guess on some older versions of the software, there was a license key that was needed from Cisco where you would have to uh, get I guess a challenge would be sent out, and then they would have to give you a response from like an account manager, and then you'd have to input that. I'm pretty sure that they've lifted that, or it's because the fact that I'm on the right physical platform. I do know that the in order to run the ACI simulator, you need to be running a UCS C Series 220 M3 or better. So, and I believe the version 2 of that would be the M4, which is the later generation or newer generation. So basically, what I did is I downloaded it, and I have to be honest with you guys, it's a beast of an application. So a couple of things that you need to be aware of. Let me go ahead and pull up some things real quick. So I've already taken care of all of this, but I've got it working. I'm actually going to power down this OVA and power it back on. But before I do that, because every time you power it off and power it on, from what I heard, it restarts the process. So, which means you'll have to go through fabric discovery and discover the nodes. And before I do that, let's talk about some of the back end things. So first and foremost, when you download the OVAs, assuming that you have the ability to download, you have a entitlement to download the 4, 10 gig or 11 gig OVA files. So when it comes down, it'll be 4 roughly 11 gig files, so it's 45 gigs worth of data you're going to have to download. And I tried to use 7-zip to try to join them all together. I've downloaded things in the past where it's come down in multiple parts, part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, etc., where you go to like part 1 is like the main file, and then you open that one up after you have all the individual files downloaded, and then it says, oh, well, I see all 15 files now, and so it's able to unpack all of that. So that didn't work. So I did a little bit of Googling, and I found this little file link right here. And basically, what this file, or what this, the command prompt, basically, so if you don't already have it, you'd have to go into Windows command prompt, because I run Windows. I'm not a Mac guy. You'd have to go to the directory where the OVA files sit. So in my case, it's C users rob downloads, right? So I typed in this command, type. It's acisim 4.2-2e part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4. You have all 4 parts, and I want to basically pipe that or redirect it to a single acisim.ova file. Okay, now I did that. It took probably half an hour, and I wouldn't say my system is the fastest. I'm actually in the process of looking to upgrade my personal computer up to something newer and better. But basically, this is the command that I had to put in. I'll put this in the description below, so you guys will have the copy and paste available for it. So you literally just take this date, and if you download a slightly newer version, because I'm sure by the time you watch this video, potentially a newer version came out, or if you're working with an older version, just swap out the 4.2-2-2e with whatever version of the ACI simulator you're working with. And once you do that, give it some time. I think it was a half hour before it was all said and done. And so I just copied that from my personal computer to my storage appliance. And this is basically what it came out to be. So I copied it, and this is basically what you end up getting. So it's a 44.5 gig file. It's huge. It took probably 7 or 8 minutes on my home network to copy it from my local computer to my storage appliance. Now I'm not going to be redeploying this way, so it's saved. I'm not going to blow it away because it took another hour and a half from the time that I went to deploy it in ESXi to the time that it was done copying, because it's a 44 gig file. So now that I have that done, one of the things you have to do in here is, let's go ahead and click on this guy, let's go to edit settings. It needs 16 gigs of RAM, it needs 8 vCPUs, and I gave it a 250 gig hard drive. So it's got plenty of hard drive space available to it. Oh, I'm sorry. The ISO file is also available. I gave that 250 gig, but that's the ISO file is for the hardware variation of the ACI simulator. This is the virtual machine version, so it automatically allocates 80 gigs, which I had plenty of hard drive space available to it. So, and at that point, one of the things you have to do as you're going through the steps is you have to supply an IP address for the management. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm actually going to right click. I'm going to say power off, because at this point here it's going to take a minute or so for that to happen. So there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to power it back on, and I'm going to open up the console. And so you get this guy right here. And so this hangs out here for a few minutes. So at this point, it's like a hurry up and wait kind of deal. And as things progress, I'll go ahead and help you understand the details that you need to go through. So now I know that there's been some folks that have posted on some of the different support forums and just, Google, and there's blog articles and stuff like that about some sort of activation key. I was never prompted for one. Okay, so it was one of those things where when I went through and deployed it, I was fully expecting to run into it. And I know some folks that work for Cisco that are account managers that, I could be like, hey, so-and-so, can you go out and, help me out with an activation key? Yay or nay. If they can't, oh well, I can't play with the ACI simulator. But I was never prompted through the initial installation. Now, technically, this is my second install, because every time you reboot, at least this is what I'm told, that you need to go back through the process all over again, because then you have to go through fabric discovery and all that type of stuff. So I'm going to pause the video while this does its thing, and then once it's done doing its thing, I'll go ahead and bring you guys back in through the relevant parts, just so you guys know where to click. And there's really no clicking at this point. You're basically going through the process of watching the install happen. This does take a fair amount of time. It's not something that's going to happen right away. If you're looking for it to pop up and start doing its thing right away, not really not going to happen. I mean, I've got a fairly powerful server, and this thing seems to crawl. Now, again, I don't know if you're working on an older version of code, 4.1 or 3.x or whatever what is out there. Here I'm seeing where it says VM is activated, so I don't know at what part any type of activation key would have ever been needed. Maybe because I'm using the platform that it's supposed to run on originally, that it doesn't need that because it detects the right underlying hardware, which is a UCS C series. I don't know, but I'm just showing you my situation as it sits, because right now that's my situation. So again, just so you guys are aware, I am using a UCS C series C220-M3S is what I've got. I've got 128 gigs of RAM in it, and I've got 24 logical processors and stuff like that. So here we are. This is the initial process here. So it's the amount of time that I've taken to babble about this has gotten us to this point. So we're at the point now. I'm going to go full screen. Whoop. Let me back out of that real quick and do this. Let's go full screen so you guys can see what's happening. And actually, let me do this. Let me go magnifier. Perfect. Hopefully that'll be easier for you guys to see. So enter the fabric name, ACI fabric 1. Sure, we'll go with that. Enter the fabric ID. We're going to go with 1. I'm keeping this all the defaults. I don't mess with it at all. Pod number is 1. Is there a standby controller? No. Is the controller, enter the controller ID is 1. The controller name is APIC1. I don't mess with this. This is the IP addresses, the /16 address range that is going to be dedicated for all of the connectivity for the TEPs, which is going to be the VXLAN tunnel endpoints. This is basically going to be the IP addresses that are going to be allocated for all the VXLAN communication inside of the ACI fabric. So I'm going to keep that to where it is. I'm going to use VLAN 4. I'm not going to mess with that at all. Let me go ahead and move this over just a little bit so it's easier for you guys to see. Hopefully I get a little bit more in there. Perfect. So the bridge domain multicast address 225.0.0.0/15, that's fine. Do you want to configure IPv6 for out-of-band management? No. Now it says this is the IPv4 address for management. So this is where you would actually have to interact with the device. So I'm going to type in with the numlock on 10.255.1.25 and /24. Next thing you have to do is you have to specify a default gateway, which is going to be 10.255.1.1. I hit the enter key, and then it's going to be, do I want to enable strong passwords? No. Capital N maybe? There we go. Enter the password admin. I'll just type in admin. Hopefully that'll be strong enough. 8 characters long. So I'm going to use the password capital P @SSW0RD, and same thing again. And it said, would you like to edit the configuration? No. Just hit the enter key and let it do its thing. So at this point in time, it's going to go ahead and reboot and go through its initial setup. This does take a few minutes to go and do its thing, but once it's done, it's pretty straightforward. This is the end of the CLI configuration. So as soon as it comes online, and from what I remember, let me go ahead and close out the magnifier real quick. From what I remember about this doesn't take very long. This part actually comes up rather quickly, and once it's online, then you can go to the next step and roll this out, and it'll be operational. Now, normally a virtual machine that you give an IP address, you actually see the IP address when you click on things like this. So here it is. It's already squared away. So I'm going to go ahead and move this off screen. And if I click on the ACI sim, normally you'd have something installed right here where it says VMware Tools IP address. You'd see running and then the IP address of the node. You don't get that here. So I'm going to type in, it might, one thing I also noticed was when I was going to do the install, I type in admin and then the password. It wouldn't let me log in right away. It would say login incorrect. Now, ironically, the vManage for Viptela doing SD-WAN does the exact same thing. Until the system is ready to accept the login, you can't do anything. So now this brings up to the next point where when we pull up Firefox and we try to log in, that'll be the next step. So let's go ahead and get to that point now. Let me go ahead and break out of that. Okay, so this is the information you have to type in here. It's going to be 10.255.1.25 HTTPS. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit the enter key. And now it gives me a security risk. I'm going to say advanced. I'm going to say accept the risk and continue. So now it's waiting for the APIC. And if you look up here in the upper left-hand corner, it says APIC. And here we are, we've dropped off at APIC. And so I'm going to type in the admin and the password. In this case here, it's going to be that same password I typed in before. I hit login, and I'm dropped into the APIC controller. Now again, APIC is going to be the device that controls the ACI fabric, right? It's the application policy infrastructure controller. And I'm going to click on get started. Now, here's the sticky wicket part of it. when you log in, at first I was like, whoa, nothing's here. But I've watched some ACI content. I have a general basic understanding of how ACI works, and I'll be talking about that more in other videos, because now that I have something to work with, versus just be like, hey, this is how ACI works. I've never done a video on that because I've never really been able to. I'm not just going to watch somebody else's video and then basically repeat what they said. I want to actually have something to work with. So I'm going to click on Fabric here. And now that I'm here on Fabric, I'm going to go down to Fabric Membership. And you actually have to go out and discover all the devices. So one of the first things you have to do is you have to go over here to Nodes Pending Registration. And right now we're going to have one. The very first one we have is going to be TAP 101. This is going to be a Leaf device, as you can see right here. Let me go full screen real quick. You can see that it's Leaf. Its supported model is yes. So we're going to right click here and go register. And the highlighted in red portions are what you need to worry about. So I'm going to type in Leaf, or this is going to be 101 is the ID, and then the node name is going to be Leaf 101. I'm going to go ahead and register. Now this is going to take a few minutes for it to go through its processing and stuff like that. And once it's registered and everything is copacetic, then it will begin its bring up, and now it's going through the discovering phase and stuff like that. Although one thing that I really need to preface here, when we're taking a look at how this rolls out, we're going to have limited functionality here. So like, to my knowledge, I'm definitely not an expert on ACI by any stretch of the imagination, but the little bit of stuff that I've done, it's like, okay, this should be pretty easy to work with. I know if you're working with the actual physical hardware and you have actual APIC, the UCS series that is the APIC control, you have the Nexus 9Ks in ACI mode, and you have them all wired appropriately, you should be able to do more than what I'll be able to do. Now if we go back to registered nodes, you'll see that it's discovered a Nexus 9K C9396 PX, and it's a Leaf node, and we see the 10.0.48.64/32 was established for the IP for the TEP. So it says it's now active. So now the way that it goes is the APIC is physically wired to this device. So if I go to Topology and I connect over to, give that a minute to do its thing, and I go to Topology, this usually takes a minute. It's a little slow here. So we see one controller, we'll see one Leaf, no spines at the moment because we haven't detected the other spine. So this is a hop by hop discovery process. So I'm going to go to Topology, and the topology you see here is this. I'm actually going to adjust this to be like this, because this is literally how it is. You have the Leaf is connected to the APIC. The APIC itself connects to the Leaf, and then it detects the Leaf, right? I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to save this topology. Say, yep, that's fine. So I've detected this Leaf, right? Now I'm going to go back to Fabric Membership, and I'm going to go to Nodes Pending Registration. I should have another device that is detected. And this device is the spine, so TAP 103. I'm going to right click on it, go register. I'm going to type in, this guy is going to be 201. So it gives me hierarchy. 201 is going to be the spine, and then this guy is going to be spine 201. I'm going to go ahead and register that. So what's going to end up happening now is the APIC discovered the Leaf that it's physically connected to. Okay, that was Leaf 101. And then it activates and becomes an active node inside of the ACI fabric. What ends up happening then is the Leaf then goes out and does fabric discovery for anything that it's wired to. So that would be a spine or multiple spines, depending on how many is physically wired to. Then you'll discover the spine. You discover all of your spines, everything is good to go. That's where we get to here, where we have registered node, and it's inactive. Right now it's going through its discovery phase. Now one thing that's actually pretty interesting about how all this stuff works, it says route reflector spine 201 is inactive. So one of the things that's interesting about the way that ACI works is the Leaf to spine physical wiring and the back, like the loop backs, if you will, these 10.0.48.64 and .65. Basically, consider that to be it's IS to IS for the discovery process, right? You form an IS to IS connectivity because IS to IS is actually a layer 2 routing protocol, but it's been extended to support IP. So you go out and you discover all these devices, and then what ends up happening is you form these BGP peerings between the devices. So you run BGP route reflection on top, and that's going to be how VXLAN control plane is taken care of, and route propagation happens and stuff like that. Now we see the it's active and it's online. So now my last so now if we go back to the topology, we click on the topology, give that a minute to do its thing. One of the things you'll see once it's done loading, it might take it a minute, is you'll see that the spine has been learned, and we'll be at that step. So give that another minute or so. Okay, it took it a minute, but for some reason it still didn't like to save. So right now we have APIC, Leaf 101, Spine 201. So now I'm going to go back to Fabric Membership, and I'm going to go to Nodes pending registration, and I have one more device, which is going to be another Leaf. So I'm going to right click on here, register. I'm going to type in here 102 and then Leaf 102 and register. I mean, the naming convention should be fairly obvious when you're doing this so that it knows what's going on. And so what will end up happening now is this will go from unknown and from a pending registration to registered here in just a moment. Once this disappears, it should show up as registered. Now it's a registered device. We have momentarily we'll get all that squared away. There it goes. Now it's into the discovery process. So the spine discovered the other remote leaf, and once this guy is done going through his discovery process, we'll be in good shape and we'll be active. Now that's when we go into the next stage of how this all works and dive into setting up tenants and VRFs and bridge domains and VLANs. And so what I plan on doing, and what's actually pretty interesting about this, and I know this is kind of later in the video, and if you're still watching this, I do appreciate you guys hanging out with me. But one of the things that I noticed about how ACI works, and once I really dove into how tenants worked, a tenant is no different than how MPLS Layer 3 VPN works. So you have a VRF that you create to separate customer A from customer B. And what you're doing is you're creating and now it's active. So let's go and do the topology. That guy squared away. The topology is set up here. So let me go ahead and adjust this quickly. We're going to move this guy down here. We're going to move this guy over to here and center the spine. So this is going to be the topology. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to save this. Yes. There. So now it's all squared away with the way that it needs to be, and everybody's happy. So basically, the way that it would work is a tenant is basically a VRF. And inside that VRF, you're going to have bridge domains. Think of that like a VLAN, or a switch, if you will, or a .1Q sub-interface, and then you're going to have VLANs. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on how that comes into play, but it's very similar to how MPLS Layer 3 VPN works and how it all comes together, and stuff like that. Then you use endpoint groups, and you use contracts to determine how things are going to communicate and stuff like that. So it's actually pretty cool to break it down, but we'll dive into tenants and how you can add a tenant and other stuff and stuff like that. So I'm not going to dive into that now because, one, I haven't tested any of this stuff out, so I don't know what's going to work and what's not going to work. But for right now, we have our fabric discovered, and we have a topology built, right? If we go to pod 1, I'm not sure if that's going to expand or not. We have all the devices that we need. I'm curious to see if it's actually going to show up the way that I saved it. Hopefully it does. But the point being, though, is we have all of the connectivity up and running. As you can see, I rebooted it and it came back online. We were basically just went through the install process all over again. There's no way that I'm aware of to keep it persistent. And that's okay for me because if I'm testing this stuff out and I break something, I can just reinstall it. So, but other than that, guys, thanks so much for stopping by and hanging out with me in this video. And until next time, guys, take it easy.